Hi, day 55 of 365 days of realizations. I am Trina Wright, and I'm doing this video series to help people awaken to who they really are. I think that there is so much power that lies in that discovery, in that knowing of who we really are, when we know that we are an energy being in a body, when we know that we have this energetic counterpart, an inner being that is holding the space for us, is flowing divine unconditional love to us, that is in every given moment seeing our epicness, delighting in our beingness, changes everything, doesn't it? And on that lines today, I want to talk about intuition and trust. And I want to talk about this notion of not just about like manifesting something, but living in the world in that way that I was speaking about, living in the world, knowing that your energy, knowing that you have an inner being. And we have been talking about this in a lot of the other videos, but it's risen for me in a bigger way. One, because I'm dealing with some of my own moving into a bigger space within myself of being able to step fully into that trust of the universe. And this big question, which is, if you knew that everything you could ever ask is and already was, what would you do? Now, what would you do if you just knew it? Like if you just full on trusted that whatever you could possibly imagine would be, then what would you do today? Because remember, trust doesn't mean there's no action. It doesn't mean that there isn't some inspired things that are going to move you in the direction of that. But what would that look like? And the second one is this interesting interaction I've been having with my 16-year-old daughter. So she started dating a boy. And there's been some interesting things that have come up, especially around like her, how much space she's going to have alone with him and some of those decisions about how she wants to live her life and what she wants to engage in. And one of the messages I've been giving to her is, I trust you. And I know how self-aware you are. I know how present you are. I know how conscious she is, not in every way because she's still a teenager, but I know that she has some of that. She understands how she feels. She's connected to that. She understands to some degree that she creates those feelings and her experiences. She does have a relationship with what she likes to call the universe and how it flows and how she flows. And so because of all those things, it feels like the right logical step for me to start shifting it to her being in line with her, because I know that just like me, she has her own inner being that is guiding her in every given moment. So let's rewind 2 years ago, or even longer than that, 2.5 years ago, when she had her first experience of dating and she had her first boyfriend, and she was in a completely different place. She was wrecked with some feelings of unworthiness. She was really looking for outer validation. Though she had a high level of self-awareness, she wasn't really able to sit with it and to like ask herself hard questions and to really wonder why she might be drawn to do the things that she was going to do. So in that stage, in that place, though there was a surrender moment for me where I had to sort of know that experience teaches and words don't, and I couldn't sort of get her through this because it did end up involving some pain. And if you recall, she was suicidal for a period of that time. So I couldn't take the experience from her. I couldn't sort of cover over it and I couldn't shake her out of it. But at the same point, it feels different than it does now. So then I did surrender to the fact that ultimately she is the decider of her own experience. She's the decider of her own creation, that this is her projection that she is living through, and she's a part of my projection. So the only part that I have control over is that part of her that is, in essence, my projection. I can control how I feel when I look at her. I can control how I feel when I think about her, when I think about her decisions. And I did it really vibrationally and really sort of in the background, communicated a message of love and, yes, trust and comfort, but also more of a message of like, I've got you, because I really felt like that's what was being called for. Whereas now I feel like she is stepping into her own knowing. And it really is this time for me to sort of turn that charge over to her inner being. And what's interesting is I get feedback from her that she's sort of surprised that I say those things. She's surprised that I'm saying, well, I trust you to find your way with this. But that is the truth. Like it's her space, it's her emotions, it's her intuition, it's her guidance, it's her body. And I want my daughters to love their bodies. I want them to feel like every expression that they want to have and finding what feels good. And entertaining that type of pleasure is part of an acceptable way to live a life. I don't want them to have sort of hang-ups, certainly ones that they got from me. There's enough out there in the world. So I want them to think that that's okay. And at the same point, have some thoughtfulness about it. I think that's the way we approach a lot of different things. And she does have that. She seems very informed and very clear on just what feels right to her and what her time frame is. And so it's just been really interesting. And I was thinking about how I wish that I had known of this a long time ago, because I think that's part of the dance of parenting is we sort of take on this role as being like the substitute source connection or inner being connection because they're so dependent and they look to us in that regard, which is cool. And I think a lot of parents can get really caught up in, especially mothers, in like loving that feeling of having them sort of look at you that way. But ultimately, our role is to then hand that back over to their inner being. So to teach them about how to connect to that intuition within themselves and to be able to trust that the guidance and the intuition that they're getting is coming from that solid place. So then they stop looking to me or to their parent or to the culture or to their friends or to a boyfriend, a teacher, like to something else outside of them to externalize and validate that worthiness, and they can just bring it home. That's ultimately what I want for my daughters, just like I want for everyone else. I want everyone to know you have an inner being. Your inner being sees your worthiness beyond measure, never doubts it, never questions it. You never have to do a thing to prove anything to your inner being because it is you and it sees your epic worthiness, value. It sees your godness. There's just no way around it. And so if we can all see that, then it's going to shift how we show up in the world, how we move in our energy, how we use our vibration and what we want to manifest and create. Even though it's all just a creation, like even though it is this projected illusion that we're living in, we still, it's still filtered by our beliefs. And one of the beliefs is that it's darn real. Another belief is just whatever those layers of beliefs are, like all the things that we have attributed to our unworthiness. So I felt this thing with her that like just the fact that I said to her, I trust you, I get it, I believe that you understand yourself better than I could possibly understand yourself from outside. And I had this real recognition within me that if I was going to comment, what do I want to bring to this? What do I want to bring to my daughter? Do I want to bring the whole enchilada of everything that I've ever had as an experience with a boy, with a man, with my own relationship with my body, with my own sexuality? Is that what I want to bring? Is that really up to me to give that to her? Or do I want to bring like this experience of just like openness and flexibility and intuitiveness and self-discovery? And that's really what I want to leave her with, is this is her journey to discover. And I'm here. She can bounce things off me. I know kids think that's awkward, but she can talk to me about it. I'm open. I trust her, and I'm going to support her in what she wants. Of course, keeping it in the range of like, sort of like the obvious thing, the safety thing, but also, she's going to go to his house alone. And one of the things I said was, I think his parents aren't there, going to be home for a bit of it. And she said, well, what do you think about that? And I said, I don't know. What do you think about that? Because ultimately what she thinks about it is much more important. And this caused me to land onto a thing that we live our lives into our beliefs. So what is her belief about it? If she feels comfortable and she feels good, then everything's going to line up, because the law of attraction is going to bring her more with this boy that feels good and is safe and comfortable and all those kind of things. But when you're somewhere and you get this sort of iffy feeling about someone, well, maybe that's the time to say, you know what, at this point, I don't think my belief can believe that this is the best thing for me to do. So I'm not going to do it. And it stands true for everything. And so that is sort of banked on this idea of trust. If we could get into 100% alignment, or we could get really, really close, maybe not 100%, but we could get into a clean place of alignment trumps everything. Then we could just flow, we could just trust. And that's what we're all reaching for, is this doubtless trust. Like, I ask, it's not even that I ask. I don't even need to ask, because the universe already knows. But when I have an intention and I want to live in a certain way, like mine right now is I want to express myself to other versions of myself, like other beings that are out there or seem to be out there, just because I want to help awaken as many people as I can, not because there's something that I'm going to do that they can't, but because it's a remembering process and we're all in this together. And so I want to stand in that place, and that's my intention. And now if I could just fall into that intention and trust my inner being, to just lead the way, lead the way, lead the way. And we could do that with every single thing. But if I start to feel a doubt in that, or I start to feel a fear in that, I start to feel fearful about stepping into something that is maybe different than how other people talk about it, or maybe feels a little uncomfortable. Or, if I start to say, well, I don't know, did that really come from my inner being? Is that really a good thing? Now, all of a sudden that belief it's gonna filter through it. And so my ideal is to clean it up, come back into that space and say, so how can I shift this belief so that I can fully step into the thing that I am being invited to? And it's an ongoing process. And when you're spiritually conscious and aware and awake, then that is part of what we do, part of the journey that we have. Again, that's what I want to teach my kids. So intuition, yes, we feel deeply when we feel this pull, but oftentimes what we experience is the thing we're feeling pulled to can feel really counter to the way that people roll and react and engage and participate in their own created illusion. They don't know it's a created illusion. They think it's something that came from outside of them. They think bad things can come and get them. They don't understand that they create everything. So why would I, as a conscious creator, as a spiritually intentional being, conscious and awake, take my cues from others' example that is not where I want to be? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to choose epic beings that are demonstrating a level of the consciousness that I aspire to have or already feel like I am in tune with, like Bentino Massaro, like Muji, like Adashante, like people that are manifesting a life of their own choice and understand how to live as that epic being that they are. That seems to be, but we all have this tendency to just take cues from anybody. We think that every example that we see is relevant to us when it really, really isn't. Like, that would be like, when my daughter makes me laugh when she says, well, none of my other friends' moms would say that, and she definitely knows that my niece's parents probably wouldn't say that. And I said to her, and that's okay. Like, it's okay. That doesn't mean that you can't have a different experience. It doesn't mean you can't reach for something completely different than what you see in front of you. That doesn't have to be the model of where you can go with your life, is just what you can see around you. Like, if you don't see an example of something, does that then mean it's not possible? Of course not. And if you really trust that your inner being, the universe, has you, and that you can just fall back into that trust and into that knowing and move forward every time an inspiration is being called forth, then it will just all work out, and it will just be beautiful in however it works out. So I invite you to contemplate with yourself intuition, and then how you play this game of like feeling an intuitive call, but then having it maybe bump into a belief that maybe you weren't even conscious of, but now you are, because that's part of the game we're playing. Is our inner being calls us to show us the thing that's standing between us and it, and to then be able to sink into that and be like questioning, like, what is that telling me? What do I need to do? How can I move differently? How can I be differently? And also, just when I get those nudges, how can I just trust? Like, imagine that. So you get a nudge, you just 100% trusted that it came from your inner being, no question, and you're going for it. And you know that it's going to take you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And you just had that trust. What would that look like? What would it feel like? I don't mean what would it look like as the end result, because we often do that. We often skip all the way to the end where we're driving the sports car or living in the big house on the ocean or flying on vacation to France, But I mean more incrementally, like, just right this minute, the nudge comes, you 100% believe it, no doubt, doubtless. Totally see your infiniteness, see every possibility, know that the universe is just magical and can line up any possible thing that you could have had as an intuitive nudge. That's going to happen. Now what? What does it feel like to know, nudge after nudge after nudge, you're just going to get pulled along to this thing that you may think you know, but your inner being will know better? Because it is true that when we ask, it is given, but it's also true that sometimes what we ask with our more person energetic focus versus our full source focus might not be the same. So often we will ask for, maybe it's less than what we're really asking for, what we're really capable of. Like, we don't really understand all the variations and nuances of our energy, of the vibration that we're putting in, but our inner being does. So, what would it take and what would it feel like if you followed the nudges that came from your inner being, trusted that's where they were coming from, didn't need to know where they were going, but just followed it, followed it, followed it? And this could be relevant for parenting, like just get out of your own way and show up the way you want to. It could be for your relationship, it could be for a job, it could be for starting a business, it could be for doing a video like this and just being in the flow and trusting that whatever comes out, like you need to go do a presentation at work and you do a little outline and then you just let yourself flow into it. So I invite you to consider all of that. If you have any thoughts you want to share about doubt or fear, something that you're working on or some view that you have about it, or this idea of intuition, because I think they're almost like doubt and intuition. I mean, doubt and certainty obviously are opposite ends of the same stick, but somewhere in the middle is like this intuition. Because when I move from the idea of how the matrix tells me to behave and using my logical mind and I flow into source, then it feels like it's an intuition. It doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't have to line up with something else. It doesn't have to come from an example I found outside of myself. It just comes from this depth of feeling of the rightness of it all. So anyway, I would love to hear what you think about that. So if you feel inspired, then comment below. And if you like these videos, then subscribe to my channel, because it's just fun. It's fun to talk about these things. It's fun to co-create together and share and play. Remember, it's just a game. We're all having fun, and I will see you tomorrow.